Hello, now that I'm feeling more up to it, I'd like to talk about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. This is part one, the Fellowship of the Ring Extended Edition, which, if you're gonna watch it, even though they're longer, I'd say the extended editions are the way to go. The first film came out in 2001, and it was a long process to get there. Peter Jackson tried to get these movies made. He initially had, I believe it was 20th Century Fox sign on to make the film. I mean, he signed on with them, and he, even though he wanted to do a trilogy, he decided to market it as two movies because he didn't want to scare a studio off. And he was getting studio interference he was caving into. And then the mandate came down. Can you make it one film? So he made a deal with them. All or nothing. I sell it to another studio, or I leave, you make the film your way and ruin it. So he went around from studio to studio and finally went to New Line. Which, again, this is back when they took risks with movies. Now we got this cookie cutter assembly line formula that we don't deviate from. Anyway, he took it to New Line, and Bob Shea, the studio head, after he saw the demo reel, some test footage, and just what the wonderful craftsmen at Weta made for the film, Bob Shea said, "Why are you making two films? Aren't there three books? You should make three films." Anyway, this film is just phenomenal, and I believe for the American audience came out at the right time. This film came out December 19th, 2001. Just 2 months after, just a little over 2 months after the 9/11 terror attack. And this film was the great escape. And I'm sure, too, it was very. I don't remember what my mindset was at the time, but it had to be very reassuring to go after having such a devastating event happen, to be able to see such clearly defined heroes. And this film has so many great characters. I talk about the plot, but we all know it. Frodo has to take the One Ring to Mordor to destroy it, and he's joined by the Fellowship of the Ring. And it's a great story. Tolkien wrote a masterpiece. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is the second best-selling book of all time. And it was something he poured his heart and soul in. Peter Jackson put the same kind of dedication into making these movies, as did everyone involved, even the actors. Even though they may have been familiar with Tolkien's work, they quickly read the books and devoured it and learned as much as they could. Viggo Mortensen, who was perfectly cast to play Aragorn, had a son who was a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and as he mentions in the special features, when he got the call about it, his son was just beside himself at the thought that his dad could play Aragorn. And it worked out. Everyone was cast to the T. The dramatic moments work really well. The more lighthearted moments in the film work really well. Some could say the lighthearted stuff in the beginning clashes with the more serious stuff later on, but the point of the stuff with the Shire is to show there's something in the world worth saving. We get to see some characters throughout this, like, not just in this movie, but in later ones, Merry and Pippin, as you'll see in later films, go from very cowardly to wanting to be in the front lines of the war, that they're ashamed that their friends are fighting and they're not. Sam, the gardener for Bag End, winds up accompanying Frodo throughout his whole journey, and the relationship between Sam and Frodo, I think the term was Bat Boy, but it was an old British military tradition, and Tolkien served in World War One, and I believe the term was Bat Boy, like I said, and he was basically the officer's assistant, but because he would always be accompanying the officer, the relationship between the officer and Bat Boy was this very deep thing, especially during war, because of how many times they would have snatched life out of the jaws of death and survived together. And the way Sean Astin and Elijah Wood play that in this is masterfully. Sean Bean, who plays Boromir, gets his character who gets tempted by the ring and tries to take it from Frodo, gets a great redemption where he's defending Merry and Pippin from the Uruk-hai, and he takes multiple arrows before he finally succumbs to his wounds and can't fight anymore. To bring a Star Trek reference into this, if General Martok had been on the battlefield, he would have told Boromir, "You have the heart of a true Klingon." And Aragorn, my favorite character in the franchise, and they made some distinct differences from the book I like. In the book, he always had the busted sword Narsil, and when he goes with the Fellowship, the elves reforge it and he calls it Elundil then, where in the movie he's very reluctant to step into that role. He doesn't think men have the strength to govern the world, and he doubts his strength because of his ancestors' failure to destroy the One Ring. Very good stuff, and he comes through a journey where he basically tells Elrond, "I do not want that strength," to when Boromir's dying. He hasn't embraced becoming king yet, but he promises Boromir, "I will not abandon our people to destruction," and he takes the Armguard piece with the symbol of Gondor, the Tree of the King on it, and puts it on, and at this point, he hasn't fully accepted he needs to become the king yet, but he's taking a step closer. I may not like this, but I have a responsibility to the people of Gondor I need to fulfill. Great moment, and we have the scene where the Fellowship splits into three different directions. Merry and Pippin taken by the Uruk-hai, Frodo and Sam going their own way with the ring, Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas going after Merry and Pippin, and it's good because from this point we get three distinct main storylines where they have to take change from the book, because the book, you'll have Merry and Pippin stuff somewhat intercut with Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas, but you don't, from this point, after the Fellowship splits, you'll get all of that. Then after the Helm's Deep and whatnot's over, then you go back in time in the book, and it starts again where the previous book left off, and then you follow Frodo and Sam. So they had to take liberties because the book is not written in a very cinematic way. In fact, a lot of literary conventions would suggest you don't write a book like this, but it proves with the book sometimes you have to break conventions. One of my favorite standout performances is Christopher Lee as Saruman and Ian McKellen as Gandalf. Two masterful actors, perfectly cast. So the Fellowship of the Ring, I give an A plus. Which, spoiler alert, that's going to be all three of them and the trilogy as a whole. Stay tuned for my next review, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King, which I plan on uploading on the 17th of December, which I can't believe the film's going to be 15 years old. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. Over and out.